good, right?
A little bit, but it's all good. Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. Tonight we are discussing our read, The Hidden Cost of Being African American, How Wealth Perpetuates Inequality by Thomas Shapiro. And family, look, if you don't have the book or if you did not read the chapters, still join the discussion. I'm telling you, you'll learn so much. Just like even if you don't have the book, even if you have it and you haven't read it, still, tune into these discussions because they are extremely informative and extremely powerful. I am your host. I'm your sister, Dr. Oya Ma'at, and I have with me my brothers, Brother T and Brother Everett. But so, Brother T, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Hey, family, how you doing? Once again, thanks for allowing me to be on your platform. I'm Dr. Ma'at for this great book reading of The Hidden Cost of Being African American. I'm Brother T. I'm Tewolo. Also go by JT Coin Rings, where I talk precious metals and I turn precious metal coins into rings that you can wear. But I do love reading and love learning information that's here in this book.
All right, Brother Everett.
Peace and blessings, Brother Everett from Real Truth and Power Live and Real Truth and Power Nonprofit Business, and blessed to be here to show some love. Also, Division Secretary and Treasurer of the UNI in Baltimore. Always got to kick out love for my UNI.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And happy Black August, family. Today is August the 8th. And so I meant to say, hopefully I wish you all a happy Black August the last Sunday. But if I didn't, happy Black August, family. A lot is going down in August. We're turning up. Brother Everett, tell them what's happening on the 14th.
14th in Baltimore, we have the Marcus Garvey Day Festival. It's going to start with a march on somewhere off of North Avenue. I think Penn North Station, but I get that information. And we're going to head over to Harlem Park School. We're going to have Black vendors. We're going to have a lot of powerful speakers. And we're going to celebrate Garvey Day as best we can with Black love.
Absolutely. And shout out to the Melanated Cafe, his organization for Black August. They have a bunch of things scheduled, family. Movie showings. They're going to be taking a pilgrimage to Virginia to go to one of the rebellion sites. And so that organization, they're doing a lot of big things. And so check out the Melanated Cafe. He's on Instagram. Check them out. They have a lot of things going on. Also, family, check out Baba Imhotep, PLM, Pan-African Liberation Movement. They have Race First. They have the Race First rally here in Baltimore. And from my understanding, there are about 10 other cities who've joined in who are having Race First rallies on August the 28th. Okay, August the 28th in 10 cities. Their Race First rallies are taking place. I had the honor of interviewing the coordinators from these different cities. And so be sure to go back and check out that video where we have these coordinators talking about the Race First rallies. I know it's going to be one in Philadelphia, one in Buffalo, New York, of course, one here in Baltimore. Another one is taking place in Mississippi, Ohio, LA, Arkansas, and a few other places. Okay, so be sure, family, to go to that video and check it out. I also want to just give a quick shout out to Dr. Runoko Rashidi. He became an ancestor last Monday. Last Monday or Tuesday. He transitioned while he was on his trip to Kemet. And so I know right now the Hoppy film, they're over there paying tribute to Dr. Runoko Rashidi. I also had my own little tribute to him where I brought on Professor James Small to talk about the work of Dr. Runoko Rashidi. And so we gotta, family, we gotta honor them. We gotta honor them, and we have to continue their legacy, continue his legacy. He actually transitioned while he was at work. He took a group of people over to Kemet. And while he was there, I think they said he arrived on Friday and ended up having a heart attack on Monday. And so, my heart goes out to him and his family. And I'll also be posting his family's Cash App because I'm hearing things about them needing to get the body back here, to the country and to help with funeral expenses and all sorts of stuff. And so I'll make sure that I post that information underneath this video. So I see Brother Akata's in the building. Peace to you, brother. The Melanated Cafe is in the building. Peace to you, brother. I see Justin Maurice. He said, peace, Dr. Ma'a. Glad to catch you live. It's been a while. Yes, indeed, sir. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you so much. All right, so let's jump right into it. we're reading chapter 4, or we're discussing chapter 4, middle class in black and white. How level is the playing field? And we know that the playing field isn't level. We know that. And so that is what the chapter is about. So what Shapiro is doing at the beginning of this chapter is literally comparing the wealth of blacks and whites. That's what he's doing. He's comparing the wealth between blacks and whites. But you know, I always like to start off with middle class blacks and whites. And so I want to first start off with a definition of middle class, right? And he says, well, to define the middle class, we look first at income, marking families in the middle 60% as middle class. So those earning between 17,000 and 79,000. He says this relative definition will always produce a middle class representing 60% of families. With regard to education, we can draw the middle class line at families in which at least one adult has earned a bachelor's degree. The most commonly used method of determining middle class status, employees' job rankings. He says this notion of middle class includes professionals, technical workers, administrators, managers, supervisors, and clerical and sales workers. So basically, he's saying that when, you know, the definition of middle class includes, you know, your job, your income, and your educational achievement. And he says that most Americans consider themselves middle class people anyway. Okay, and so that is the definition of middle class. But what can one of you brothers talk about what Shapiro found when he compared the wealth of middle class blacks to the wealth of middle class whites?
Brother
Brother T, your mic is muted. You gotta unmute your mic. Go ahead, Brother T.
There we go. I wanted to point something out with that first page that Tom Shapiro put together. He said, the genius of the American dream is the promise that those who work equally hard will reap roughly equal rewards, be it in wealth, lifestyle, or status. The question of equal opportunity frames a truncated national dialogue on race because we feel deeply that these barriers blocking achievements are based on race are unfair and deprive society of skills and talent. One thing that I wanted to stress was that he wanted to point out that people believe about work hard, not defining hard, work the same because everything is equal, that we'll get equal results. And what he stressed in this chapter is that middle class is different. It depends on a certain amount of terms like class. And also I wanted to break down what it means to be middle class just a little bit more before we go any further.
Go ahead.
Middle class, having a job that can comfortably but not extravagantly support a family, being able to afford a safe car to commute to work and reduce injury and fatality from accidents, being able to take 2 to 4 weeks of vacation a year with a family. Now, this is something else I looked up. Not in this chapter, just my extra research to talk about this first page.
I love that. What was your reference for that definition?
This came. I'll break it up one second. It came from the Motley Fool. The author name was Matthew Frankel.
I love it. All right, I'm getting ready to write that down.
Are you middle class? 5 traits you might have. The ability to pay your bills on time, a secure job, ability to save money, time and money for vacations, at least $1,000 in savings. The Motley Fool by Matthew Frankel was an article that he wrote. So just to put things in context, these things you should be able to normally do as defined as middle class. But as we'll find out later on in the chapter, and as we discuss, that there's a difference between families, what they see as middle class and how we see middle class as being the blacks.
Beautiful. And so, Brother Everett, when he compared the middle class, I'm sorry, let me do this first. When he compared the wealth of middle-class blacks to middle-class whites, what were some of the discoveries, if you could think of them?
Well, which was astonishing to me, he goes on and compares of equal value. So he's saying, okay, I'm going to take black middle class with good education, good income. What was the other one? Education, income, and I don't know why I went blank here.
No, income. Oh, job, occupation.
So they all had good jobs, good income, and nice education. So from the income and the education level, it was equal. It was pretty much equal. But he was trying to figure out, he wanted to prove that doesn't define the separation. It's something else there. So what we wind up going, he goes into interviewing a few families and showing some charts. One of the things that really stood out was the fact that we all made the same income. All these people went to schools, but the white middle class had higher net income. And the reason was they had more assets. They didn't have a lot of student loans they had to pay. And as we went through all the other chapters, the most important thing was it was a lot of inheritance given to give them the advantage. And I thought that was really crucial, especially most of the times the black middle class families, they had student loans they had to pay. Not to go too forward, but one family, I think they had to use the 401k, use all of that up. And they had probably more income as far as money in a home than the white family. In fact, one white family, the father was laid off of work, but the net assets, the white family had more because the home was paid for. They didn't have student loans. They didn't have all of those bills. So when Brother T was talking about when he went to define middle class, a lot of times we think we're middle class because we make a certain amount of income. Or we're on our own. For example, me, I went through there like I'm middle class. I'm an entrepreneur, but I don't have time to take a vacation right now. So I guess I'm not middle class. I got to work. Somebody calls out, I got to work. So it's a little different when we start talking about middle class and we break it down. And I really got into the fact that he was comparing those families. That was real powerful.
Absolutely. And I just, what you sparked, you really sparked this idea. And I just want to share my screen really quickly. You said that, when we were comparing middle class whites to middle class blacks, and in terms of their college degrees, you would think that, people who are equally educated, right, should have the same amount of wealth. But you see here, this was an article from the Wall Street Journal that was just published. Look at this, August the 7th. And it says college was supposed to close the wealth gap for Black Americans, but the opposite happened, right? The opposite happened. And, it goes on to say Black millennials thought college would help them get ahead. Instead, it is setting them back. And so all of this is doing, Brother Everett, is giving credence to what you just said, that, when we're looking at these charts and we're comparing the wealth between middle-class whites and middle-class blacks as it relates to education, we see that it's not, the education isn't helping us, and it's not helping us close the racial wealth gap. Not that it's not helping Black families, progress, but it's not helping to close the racial wealth gap. It says the median net worth of households with Black college graduates in their 30s has plunged over the past 3 decades to less than 1/10 the net worth of their white counterparts, according to the Wall Street Journal analysis. And just like you said, Brother Everett, that's because we don't have parents paying for us to go to college. Typically in the Black community, you got to figure it out. you got to either get college loans. Your parents would say, hey, look, and I've had conversations with my peers and other people. Your parents would say, look, I'll provide you with, some food, clothing, and shelter, whatever. You on your own when it comes to college. You're going to figure this thing out. Right. So a lot of us took out loans. I went to the military. I give thanks that my mother was able to provide me, again, with food, clothing, and shelter. So I was good with that. But I went into the military to take advantage of the Montgomery GI Bill to pay for college, and I applied for scholarships and things of that nature. But, a lot of folks, are in debt, and so, like you said, Brother Everett, we don't have that leisure. And so we see that when we're comparing the wealth. I'm looking at the chart on page on page 91, the educational middle class. And you see here that it says that, the median net worth for whites who have an education is $111,000. For Black people who have an education, educated Black people, our median net worth is $33,000. And then if you look at the median net financial assets, and right then, family, remember, net financial assets are you know, your liquid, you know, what you can grab now, right? So what you can liquidate and grab now, what you have access to now. So for whites, that's $56,000. And for us, it's only $15,000. And this is among your educated Black people, your educated Black class.
Yes.
And, you know, and one thing I do want to add before I pass the mic, I'm looking at the top of page 92, and I wrote powerful, but this is my fear. So in this paragraph at the top of page 92, he talks about how it's hard for Black people to secure their middle class status. So you could be a family that over the generations reach the middle class status, but it's harder for Black families to maintain their middle class status than it is their white than our white counterparts. So, you know, that's always been, because think about it, as soon as somebody loses a job in a Black household, our comfort, all that is going to, you know, our, you know, you see a decrease in our lifestyle. But with the white folks, like you said, Brother Everett, earlier, you said the guy lost his job, but they were still, the white dude lost his job, but they were still able to live a middle class lifestyle in spite of that, because they had assets in their family and they also had parental welfare.
Yeah, I think that net asset is something that's very crucial. He talks about it throughout the book. You know, when we think about our wealth, we think about our jobs, and we think about our income that we make. We don't subtract the bills, the college tuition, and things of that nature. So when he compares with on 92, when he starts talking about the Conways and the Barzaks, and I get mixed up because Conway seems like they'd be the Black family by the name, kind of confused, but Conway's the white family. They kind of was struggling. They wasn't making a lot of income. You know, they still had the house and everything because of inheritance. But when they came down to breaking down the net asset worth, the Black family, once they subtracted the student loans and everything, they probably had a net worth of $10,000. But the other family, no student loans, the house was able to get pretty much, you know, a hookup with through inheritance. So that net asset is crucial. I think that's a very foundation of the book that he's trying to stress, that I think Black people need to look at. When we start talking about net assets, we're not just talking about how much money you're making. That doesn't empower you. What empowers you is not having a lot of bills, having a lot of assets, and being able to leave something for your family.
Ashe. And family, thank you. I see some folks just joined us. Family, we're talking about the hidden cost of being African American, how wealth perpetuates inequality, by Thomas Shapiro. If you don't have the book, if you haven't read the chapter, still stay back, kick it with us, and listen to the discussion, because again, you're going to learn some things. I'm telling you, this book is really eye-opening. All right. So you mentioned the Conways and you mentioned the Barzaks. Go ahead, Brother T.
Yeah, before we go further, because I think Tom Shapiro put something in place that we have to pay attention to before we go, to really understand the difference between middle class families. Okay, on page 88, he states about wealth distribution, right? He says wealth distribution is more unequal than income distribution. Okay. One thing he put down, he introduced wealth increases dramatically as one moves up the class ladder. Wealth matters for class, and class matters for wealth. So you understand that this families that have the money, it becomes, as we talked about before, a culture. You have a certain mindset when you're in a family, not from a working class that we may work, but a upper class, as we thought about the 80s, because he said from the 60s to the 80s, this class was created. We think about in 1984 when a popular show came on called The Cosby Show.
Come on, talk about it.
It talks about a certain way people moved in the upper echelon. But when we break down class, this is even studied in psychology. We have Michael Cross, PhD from University of Illinois. When I was going further into it, he says it suggests that the context we grow up in and are socialized in are an important part of how we shape ourselves. So what we grow up in, we kind of shape. So we realize that people think differently, and they put things that's important differently from people that never heard of the context. It's because they grew up in this middle class that, hey, I supposed to go to this school. I supposed to buy a home in this neighborhood. I supposed to go and study art because this is what's all introduced to me. And that middle class that was created for whites, they were introduced to these things. We got to make sure that this is the slight difference that he's talking about when we talk about the Conways and the Buzzards. You understand? Because one person can make $30,000 or $70,000 a year, but can take a couple months off and be rest assured because he has that money and them assets, and he knows that, hey, my family set something up so I can be taken care to go back to school. That's one thing that the Buzzards had that the Conways didn't have. They had a home, but after subtracting their debt, they only had $10,000 left, right?
Facts.
One person had $95,000 and a promise of more money because he understood the culture of that family. Allowed him to go back to school to take another profession as a teacher and not care about his house being taken away from him. And also, they rest assured that their family is going to be taken care of. These are things we got to understand. The class, which was mentioned on page 88. And like I said, when I went a little further to understand that class is studied, even in psychology, because the people who experience middle class, it's a certain culture that they adapt, a mindset to shape their life. I just want to make sure we go to that point before you go on.
No, please. And where's that line? Because I don't have that highlighted on page 88. The line that talks about how class. Where's the line that you read, Brother T? Because I don't have it. I'm
class.
Looking on,
okay, got you. Page 88 on the second paragraph. It starts off, "We know already wealth distribution."
Yes.
Then it goes down, and you'll see the word class.
I have it.
And then as I study, I go grab other articles, and that's where I grabbed the study of class as a psychology is being studied. So.
No, absolutely. So thank you. So let's dig a little deeper into the Barzaks and the Conways. I think Brother Everett kind of did sum it up to say that, hey, one family, they were better off because they had, assets. They hardly had any debts. Whereas with the Conways, the Conways didn't have any debts. So it says they didn't have any debts or left over from college because their parents paid for college. They were given $10,000 for their down payment, and like I think one of you brothers said, they inherited $95,000. Yep. But
what about the $30,000?
I know, right? It says
grandma.
From grandma. Yep, they got $30,000 from their grandmother. But one thing that Shapiro did point out, and I'm in the middle of page 94, he said the neighborhood they lived in was black. He said overwhelmingly black. And he said that was fine with them because what they did was, it says the Conways seemed to place more importance on proximity, right? Because they live closer to the downtown area. So it says that they place more importance on proximity and affordability than on class or race characteristics of their community. But he said that as soon as they had a child, it all changed. When they were just, husband and wife and kicking in, they bought their house in that particular neighborhood. They weren't worried about the racial and class characteristics of that particular community. But when they had a child, they said, wait a minute. He talked about how they wanted to move to South Pasadena, where it says you would spend at least about $600,000 on a house. And they said, well, we're going to move over there because we want our child to have a certain quality, education. And so the area that they are now moving into is predominantly white. And it has, is a predominantly white upper class family. So, I was sitting here giggling when I read it. I said, oh, so initially they were cool kicking it in the black neighborhood. But when they had a child, they said, oh, we got to move. And they end up saying that they were moving to South Pasadena, and it says, this is what the woman said. She said, I think it was the one of the Conways, the woman, Suzanne. She says, he says, when I asked where they are thinking of moving, Suzanne says that they are very interested in moving to South Pasadena because her mother lives there. And she said, I think it has a really great school district. Additionally, it has a really old feel to it. The streets are lined with trees that create archways. It has a lot of old buildings, which I think are terrific homes. But what Shapiro did was say, well, let me go and investigate this neighborhood. And come to find out, it's a predominantly white neighborhood. And it says, as of 1999, you could expect to spend about $600,000 for a house there. So I can only imagine in 2021 what it would cost to move into one of their homes. So so again, it was just like, okay, they were cool kicking into the black neighborhood, but as soon as they had a child, they said, wait a minute, we got to get away and move into a community that looks like us, right? And shares the same class, like you said, class culture and values as we do. Do you brothers want to add anything?
I think real quick, Dr. Mott, what was really crazy is they're moving during a time when the husband is unemployed. He's actually going to school. So when it talks about earlier how the net income was 70,000, the net income right at this particular point when they're about to move is only 35,000, and only inheritance received will be able to make this happen. So that's just real important that he stresses how they're just set up to succeed more than the Barzaks, who they don't have any. They use up the 401k. They'll have a net of 10,000 with both parents working. This family with one person unemployed has doubled that net worth of a family of two working members, and they're about to move into a better community with a $600,000 home. So that means a lot when you're unemployed and can do that. That speaks about wealth and inheritance and that financial gap and the advantages they have compared to the disadvantages we have.
Absolutely. And I wanted to move into page 96. Oh, Brother T, did you want to add something before I moved along?
No, I'm glad he mentioned that, because it just, when I was reading along, it said about when Shapiro or one of the interviewers asked a question about how do they feel from moving from Jefferson Park to Pasadena. They avoided the question and said, well, Pasadena has beautiful architecture. because they understand, like we understood when you brought that point up, Dr. Ma'at, is that when it came to kids, that's all that matters. It's about making sure they put their kids in proper position to get the proper things in life. So it wasn't about the start of Jefferson Park. It's about the ending and the benefits of living in Pasadena.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was powerful. That was definitely powerful. And Brother Justin Maurice asks, he said, does inheritance disparities play a part in the overall racial wealth disparities? Absolutely, Brother Justin. Absolutely. And that's what we've been talking about in this book, the cost of being African American, how wealth perpetuates inequality. Absolutely. And that's what the author is arguing, Brother Justin. So good. You haven't been here, but you're catching on, Brother Justin. You're catching on. And so I'm at the middle of page 96, where he's now talking about the myths regarding Black spending. And so a lot of white folks, and he said they found this out through surveys, that white people believe that we are in the economic situation that we're in because of our spending habits. We don't save enough. We spend. And so he said when, an economist actually reviewed a small number of studies on savings by race and said, well, we find no evidence that African Americans have a lower savings rate than whites, and then another economist said, examine saving rates and wealth accumulation amongst wealth and Black families. And they looked at it over a 10-year period. And they said they found that the racial wealth gap would have narrowed had the share of income that African Americans devoted to savings been as high as whites. It says, importantly, however, much of this difference is attributable to the fact that savings rates rise with income. So whites can save at a higher rate than we can because they have more income than we do. And so, I love that Shapiro put that in there, because you'll hear a lot of things like, oh, Black people don't have money because of our values. We rather go buy Jordans instead of investing in the stock market, or we don't have money. So, or we look at how we spend our money. And so they would say that contributes to our economic condition in comparison to white folks. But Shapiro has totally killed that argument. Did anyone want to add to that?
One of the things I like about this page in 96, I was introduced to this book by Dalton Conley. It's called Being Black, Living in the Red. And this sums up this whole chapter, you know, being black, living in the red, how we can live in this existence and have all this debt. And just like this black or the white middle class family is allowed to move from one neighborhood to the next in order to receive assets, benefits of family members, all in their one existence. And as we truck along and try to live this American dream, this title of this book kind of summed it up: Being Black, Living in the Red by Dalton Conley. That's on the bottom of page 96 that he mentions this book. And one of the questions of this book that I think that we can look to answer: why does the wealth gap exist and persist above income differences? And the second question of this book was, does the wealth gap explain racial differences? And that's what the brother just mentioned a few minutes ago. And that's two of the questions that this book that Tom Shapiro mentioned from Dalton Conley. So I think that's pretty interesting, and it sums up what we've read so far.
Absolutely. And I see on page 97, he moves the conversation. Well, he not really moved the conversation, but he really emphasizes. He says the racial wealth gap really is about class, not race. It's really about class, right? Because you're perpetuating these classes that have been structured. They're perpetuating, you know, their wealth, right? And so he said it's really about class and not race. And he starts talking about parental resource capacities, right? The position, it says parental class positions and historical or historic inequalities. And so I want to just take a moment out just to share my screen again. So I looked at this and I sent this to you, brothers, you know, earlier this week. When you talk about parental resource capacities and parental class positions, Mark Zuckerberg, right? Who's, I think he's a billionaire now. He everyone knows him. He owns Facebook, but he didn't just pop out of the thin air as a billionaire, right? It said Mark Zuckerberg's dad said he could go to Harvard, and we know how much money it costs to go to Harvard. He could go to Harvard or have a McDonald's franchise. Who does that, Brother T? What parent do you know? It typically, I'm talking about the average Black American, and say, look, you know, T, look, man, I'm going to either send you to Johns Hopkins or I'm gonna buy one of those checker franchises for you in Baltimore City, right? It doesn't, the average Black person doesn't experience anything like this. And so Mark Zuckerberg was already set up to win when he was in his dormitory and he was creating the social network for college students. He had parents who had money who could help his idea come into fruition. He didn't have to get business loans and all of that crap that we got to go through. He had a dad that, hey, Pops, look, this is my idea. This is what I've been working on. Could you help me? You know, can you invest in this? And boom, he blew up. This is also an article you sent me, T, that I read. You know, a self-made success. Let's kill that myth. And so here you had someone who's worth a few $1 million who confessed and said, I'm not self-made. Like, we got to stop running that narrative in America that we're self-made, because we've had a lot of parental wealth given to us, or parental welfare. So brothers, do you want to expound on that?
Well, you know, Dr. Mad, he talked a little bit about it in the last chapter, but at the bottom of 97, among Black and white upper middle class families, whites are 1.5 times likely as Blacks to call upon parents with head starts. And he even talks about how Black people with less finances are usually giving money away for friends. But more importantly, he goes into saying that, you know, again, like he stated in, I think, chapter 3, that white parents are pretty much giving head starts, while Black parents are depending on their kids as they get older. And I think that's very crucial as we start to think, like, as we get older, white parents are probably, they're okay. The only time he was talking about how the white kids help their parents out by helping them move. Maybe as they get older, you know, they assist them, but not really financially. As Black kids, you know, as they're getting older, they're providing financial help for their parents. And that's something really heavy to think about. That's a big difference right there. Not alone do they get startup assistance from their parents. They're not even looking forward to helping their parents out. So their parents are really handling money. What goes to, you know, when they talk about the education part of it that defines middle class, that's something that's very important. I wonder if they're learning and talking about this in their school systems, you know, that economic part value of it, because it's traditionally going through their families as opposed to us and what we're teaching. I think that's very important, that we got to maybe change our mindset and start educating our kids on, hey, even if we messed up, hey, I need you to start doing this and setting aside this and preparing them. I think that's an educational piece that we had in our community that's no longer there, that we don't talk about.
Good point. Yeah, very good point. And I see how Shapiro, and I'm on page 99, how he didn't want to attribute Black people helping their family members and friends and parents. And he didn't want to attribute that to culture. He was saying, you know, he said cultural explanations offer only feeble rationalizations for what look like highly divergent and structured circumstances. He says, so too, one needs to be wary of superficial cultural explanations concerning given behavior. I would argue that. I understand it, because at the top of page 101, he says needs, resources, and expectations are critical, and we do not need to open the door solely to interpretations like cultural differences and family support. So I was glad that he cleaned it up, because when he said it, and he's like, oh no, we can't attribute that to culture. Like, I don't want to just leave it there. I said, wait a minute. I hope that he understands that Black people are very communal. We come from the idea it takes a village to raise a child. We come from a communal legacy. That's a communal culture. So that is African culture. Even though I know some people watch it, oh, Dr. Mott, we're African Americans. No, we're Africans in America. And when we were kidnapped and we were brought here and shipped around the world, we brought with us our culture. And our culture was very communal. And so we can't just say, oh, well, I don't want to chuck that up to culture.
Right.
We talk about reciprocity and do unto others as you have them do unto you. And
take care of your elders.
Take care of other people. Take care of your elders. So that is a culture is a very big reason why we tend to support members in our family and support our friends. But I was glad he cleaned it up on page 101 when he said he didn't want to just solely interpret those actions based on cultural differences. So I said, okay, I was cool with that when he cleaned it up.
But he gave enough examples.
Yeah, go ahead at that brother.
Yeah, he gave enough examples that kind of gave you a picture. But I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Ma'at, because it tells you the nature of what we are, of helping out our family members out. How he looked at it, I believe, and it's based off of a family. A Black family not having those resources, those assets, but they giving all they could to their kids, and at the time they don't have nothing left. As an elder, the family has to take care to assist. But the examples that he gave was the Bank of Kevin.
Right. Yes.
Kevin just could not say no. Kevin helped everybody, no matter if they can pay him back or not. But the Bank of Kevin had the resources. You know what I'm saying? So under this, I wanted to be clear. Was that family Black or white?
They were
Black. They were Black.
They were Black. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So the wife always complained, but he just thought it was the thing to do is to assist. He had to help, and sometimes that's just the nature of the person in our family that's doing well. They have to help. I think about my family as well. My aunts and uncles send money to Liberia all the time, no matter who calls, no matter what happens. And all they do is say, you know what, I just got finished sending some money to Liberia. But everyone calls you because you know why? Because you don't turn the faucet off. You know, so it's just in the nature of some people to continue to give. So when I read that, I was thinking about the Bank of Kevin. Brother Everett, you have some more to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to go into the Bank of Kevin because, like you said, Dr. Ma, that's a perfect example of culturally not agreeing with that first statement. He kind of did clean it up because our cultural disadvantage is so hard that when we come up, we like, I got to bring somebody up with me because somebody somewhere down the line helped us out somehow.
That's right.
And then it may not have been money, just might have just been a sign of advice. And most times the advice is when you get there, help somebody else out. That's us culturally. So because we're so disadvantaged, we have to help out. We feel it's an obligation to our own detriment sometimes of moving forward with our finances. And he was like, he said, I think he was not just helping out family, he was helping out the community. And he said he came to the point where, he decided that they're not even going to look, when they loan it, they don't even expect to get it back. If they do, so big, but they don't. But they felt it was like a obligation. And that's culturally right there.
Absolutely. Hands down. That's culturally. I'm on page 101 now, in the middle where he's moving into this section, possessive advantage. And he talks about how, most white Americans, as he says right here, favor the principle of equality, but oppose court-ordered, administrative, regulatory, or federally mandated solutions. Poll data and survey research revealed that Americans, at least on record, have adopted the principle of racial equality. He says, as we know all too well, principles often differ from practice, and high levels of racial inequality endure in all arenas, both public and private. He also says that a sociologist, Larry Bobo, advances the idea of laissez-faire racism, right, to explain how whites justify racial inequality, right? And it says the appeal of this justification is that whites view African Americans as individuals just like themselves, using the same set of rules to compete for success in the marketplace, rather than as members of a group who were forced to play by rigged rules used historically to ensure their disadvantage and white domination.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, I thought that was powerful. And then he moves into what laissez-faire racism involves. And he said it involves persistent negative stereotyping of African Americans, a tendency to blame blacks for their own conditions, appeals to meritocracy, and resistance to meaningful policy efforts to ameliorate America's racist social conditions and institutions. That is a fact. I didn't know how to qualify it because we just say racism, but he says it's laissez-faire. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Laissez-faire racism, but that's essentially what it is. So you have these whites that'll go out here and they'll talk about, oh, we need equality. But when it comes to making systemic changes in order to make it happen, they oppose it.
That's right.
They oppose it. And so that one of you brothers want to add to that.
I'll go ahead. Well, it goes back to the last book we read, Dr. Mott, The Createness of Whiteness. The Createness of Whiteness. When they talk about all the laws that they put in place, it's systematic right there through the laws. And so and like he said, he's like, yeah, most white people like, yeah, everybody should be equal, everybody, but they kind of thinking like, well, let them find our own way. I got the laws in my favor. I'm not trying to give up what I have. And that's the division right there. They don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to admit how they got things and how they have that advantage. And some of them may not even don't even associate it because it's custom culturally how they do things. So we don't know that much. But I thought that was powerful how he goes into that, talking about how they think about everybody should be equal, but not wanting to change the laws and stuff. That's the creation of whiteness right there.
Yeah, most definitely. That point right there. The government is formally race neutral and committed to anti-discrimination, and most white Americans prefer a more volitional and cultural, opposed to inherent and biological. I have to break that down because that's true. When I look at volitional, it says relating to the use of one's will, meaning that, hey, you can get out of this your own self. Yep. Not understand that it's inherent, meaning the person is stuck in, meaning because of what's been happening over the years and of the racism and Jim Crow and all the things that happened to us, that we are stuck in the situation. But they look at it as, hey, it's volitional. You should be able to get out of this if you do what I do, because they don't want to admit to what they call the possessive advantage. So this is one thing that kind of broke it down to me for this chapter.
No, absolutely. I'm sitting over here. Absolutely, T. Like you said, they'll blame it on our culture. They'll blame it on, oh, they don't have the will to do it. You know, anything but systemic racism. Anything but, and now what they're trying to do is, now, yeah, they're getting rid of the critical race theory. They don't want that taught. They don't want that taught in school.
Right.
You know, anything to keep on, you know, perpetuating the mindset. You get what I'm saying? That it's not, you know, that they don't have an advantage. It's not about race. You know, and so they want to get rid of critical race theory.
Right.
So one thing that stuck out to me on page 102, and I have it underlined. I don't know if y'all can see all my scratches, but he says recent surveys have shown repeatedly that nearly every social choice, and I want you to hear this, family, every social choice that white people make about where they live, what schools their children attend, what careers they pursue, and what policies they endorse is shaped by considerations involving race. T, I just want to read that one more time. I just want to read that one more time, because I want people to understand this, that when we go out here and we talk about voting and all of this other stuff, and he says this, recent surveys have shown repeatedly that nearly every social choice that white people make about where they live, what schools their children attend, what careers they pursue, and what policies they endorse is shaped by considerations involving race. So white people have a race-first mentality. They operate with a race-first mentality. They ingrain a race-first mentality in their children. So while we're teaching our children to love everybody and to love and lock arms with everybody, white folks are like, hold on now. No. They're teaching their children, you got to worry about you first. You got to look out for your interests first, your survival first. And so, family, I thought that was very key here, because a lot of our people, when we talk about a race-first mentality, you hear a lot of people, I've even heard Black people say, is that racist? Dr. Ma'at, listen to you. You know, no, we're supposed to love everybody. And that's that Christianized teaching that we've been given. No, you're supposed to love everybody. You're supposed to do for everybody. No, we're supposed to operate with a race-first mentality. Everybody else does it but Black folks. We've been socialized to lock arms with everybody instead of putting our needs first. Even with, and yes, I'm going to bring up Joe Biden. I'm going to bring politics into this.
Jim Crow Joe.
Jim Crow Joe. You clearly see that the Democratic Party has a history of not doing anything specifically for Black people. They do things for the LGBT community. They do things for the Hispanic community. They do things for immigrants, but they do not do anything for Black people. So why will we continue to vote for Democratic presidents? And this is not advocating, because people think when you dogging Democrats, you're advocating for the other. No, because I don't vote for either one of them.
It's benign neglect across the board.
Benign neglect across the board, regardless of what your political affiliation is, what your political affiliation is. But my point is this: if we were operating with a race-first mentality, we would be looking at these politicians a little differently. We would be looking at their policies, their political history, say, hold on, I'm not voting for this person. What policies are you creating for Black people? That's, you get what I'm saying? So before I give you my vote, what are you going to be doing for Black people? How are you going to be looking out for us? But we don't operate with a race-first mentality. So we'll vote for whomever because we don't put our interests first. But I digress. I just wanted to say that.
No, that was important. That was important.
That's fire.
Yeah. You know, Dr. Mike, to continue on with that, you probably was going to go there, but at the bottom of 103, when they talk to the white lady about her privilege, when she's saying,
got guilty.
I don't think it's necessarily right that we have a better education and stuff. Everyone should have the same opportunities my children do, but they don't. Okay, I'll rephrase that. I don't think it's right that my children get to go to private school and get to wear Adidas, and there are other children living in the city who aren't even fed breakfast, who wear raggedy, holy clothes, and have teachers who don't want to be there, and they get no educational benefits whatsoever. I feel guilty because I'm not doing anything to make their kids and in their schools' life better or try to help them. I'm hiding out here with my little nice neighborhood and my little private school, and I'm sticking my head in the sand and pretending like problems don't exist, so I don't have a sense of guilt over it.
They telling you, the white folks are telling you. That's how the average white person thinks.
That's right.
They're like, I know this is wrong, but I'm gonna go hide out over here with my family and be amongst my class. There you go, T. My race and my class. I know it's wrong that we're doing that. We not really, but hey, I mean that's their issue. That's the mentality that they have.
Right.
Go ahead, brother.
Race first.
And only one question will have them shivering to their knees. Would you trade with me? Would you trade with me? Everything. And the question, they'll look at you like a deer caught by headlights, right? Because they understand if they had to deal with it, they would have to do what they need to change it.
Absolutely.
See, and my mother used to say, people accept things, and if they accept it, the good and the bad, and if it's bad happening to them, they're forced to change it. They don't want to have to force to change it because right now they can walk out in society and be them, and deal with all the hidden privileges and the possessive, what do you call it again? The possessive advantage.
Yep.
All they can hide behind it because they can choose to tell you about it, or they can choose to hide it. They don't have to. Hey, guess what? You just got to know that I work where you work, and I get paid like you get paid. But I got this house over here that I can take off 2 years and just chill. I'm sorry that you have to live with 20 members all in one house, and you can't have the benefits that I feel sorry for you. But these things, you have to realize that they don't want to change with us. What we have to do is change it. We have to find a way to change it. They would fight for it. They would create policies to make sure that they have the freedom. And one thing that he states here, that we have to find a way, basically, to understand that, to change it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. Shout out to Malicella G. I hope I didn't butcher your name. Malicella G said that Jane Elliott asked that question.
That's right.
Would you switch positions with a black person?
Quiet.
Yeah, they I saw the video where she asked them that. Room full of white folks. Would you change positions with the black folks? And then she said, well, that's a problem for me. That means that you know what's happening, and you wouldn't want it for yourself. She said, but why would you want it for other people? That's what she asked them. So that's the mentality, just like the paragraph that you read, Brother Everett, at the bottom of 103. That is the average mentality of white folks. They know what's going on, but they don't want to give up they don't want to give up their possessive advantage. They don't want to give it up. And so Shapiro drives home the fact. He says historian George Lipset superbly described the notion of people's possessive investment in whiteness. They have an investment in whiteness. And I need people to understand this. Just like you said, Brother Everett, if you read the book Birth of a Nation, they have investment. They have investment in their whiteness. He says, by which he meant the rewards and benefits that many whites accrue from past and present racial inequality. Many whites are born with advantages that come to families through profits made from housing secured in discriminatory markets, through the unequal educations allotted to children of different races, and through networks that channel employment opportunities and other benefits to relatives and friends. For many white families, these are hidden advantages that simultaneously structure and reward decisions around community, schools, and jobs. They don't want to give up they're not going to give up their white privileges. And so then he concludes with this. I'm at the top of page 104. He says, above all, advantages come to families through intergenerational transfers of inherited wealth that pass spoils of discrimination to succeeding generations. This structure of advantage provides many whites with resources, power, opportunities, enhanced capacities, and status. Advantage groups not only control important resources and institutions, they attempt to make their advantages appear legitimate in their own eyes, as well as in the eyes of the disadvantaged. That was powerful to me. They legitimize having the power, having the wealth, having the resources, and then they try to make you who are disadvantaged, right, see or think that their advantage is legitimate. Go ahead, Brother T.
No, that was it.
That was it. That was it. You know what I got from it? Not to cut you off, Brother T. What I got from it, the structure. This is structural. That, you know what I'm saying? This is like a system, that intergenerational transfer of inherited wealth. You know, and he breaks it. It's like this is a structure that it provides many advantages. That's just powerful. That sums it up. It's just powerful.
You said it right there, Brother Everett. Class is a system of power based on perceived social and economic status. They just walking into their light. You know, he goes back. That's why he mentioned class. You know, it's a system of power based on perceived social and economic status. And they reaping the benefits of what they set up.
Absolutely. I'm up here. I had to grab my Bible for a second, the Blueprint for Black Power, because when I read that statement about how they legitimize their advantage and then try to get the disadvantage to see to view it as legitimate. Legitimacy is a form of power that Dr. Amos Wilson talks about. And so I'm you know, T, when you and I went through this text page for page, but I was going back to page 16 where he says competent and legitimate authority as power. And legitimate authority refers to a power relation in which the power holder possesses an acknowledged right to command and the subject an acknowledged obligation to obey. The source rather than the content of any particular command endows it with legitimacy and induces willing compliance on the part of the person to whom it is addressed. Authority can be said to be legitimate to the extent that it conforms to established rules. So he kind of gets into all of that. But legitimacy, or the power to make something look legit and have other people actually believe that it looks legit, that is power in itself. And so I just kind of wanted to add that. So brothers, before we close out, I see that Brother Justin Maurice asked another question. He says, does residential segregation perpetuate? I think he asked these questions and he knows the answer to them. But he says, does residential segregation perpetuate housing inequality? And how does that affect Blacks in terms of wealth? Thanks for taking my questions. Brother Justin, see, he's one of those ones. He pulls a Dr. Ma'at when we ask the question.
We already know
the answer, and we just do it for the audience's edification. But yes, residential segregation absolutely perpetuates housing inequality. In fact, Brother Tewolo, when we were reading Blueprint for Black Power, he brought an article to my attention that was published by CNN Money that talked about how Black people lost billions of dollars simply because they wanted to live in predominantly Black, neighborhoods, so that, and again, and also redlining and all of that contributes to, perpetuating housing inequality and adversely impacts Blacks in terms of our wealth. So I think you already knew that, Brother Justin, but you just, you just kind of threw that out there. He said in the chat, Dr. Amos Wilson talks a lot about how whites try to legitimize their stolen wealth. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. So family, brothers, do you have any closing words before we close out? No closing words. You think we kind of killed it tonight, Brother T?
Yeah, you ended it with Amos Wilson, Dr. Amos Wilson.
You said it ain't nothing else to say?
I say.
All right, family. Join us back here, same time, same place, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Sunday. Next Sunday, we will be discussing Chapter 5 of The Hidden Cost of Being African American, How Wealth Perpetuates Inequality by Thomas Shapiro. Family, also holla at harvey.lewis@gmail.com to get your Read Book Club T-shirt. All right, make sure you get it. I know, Brother Everett, you said you threw yours in there and stuff started. See, I don't know if you turned it. You said the stuff started peeling out.
My wife might have did something, but I got another one coming, so I'm good.
Okay, yeah, because I'm like, what happened? I did the brother.
I don't know.
I said, did he wash it inside out or what happened? Because my stuff has been
solid.
Your
shirt's going well, so it could have been something she did. I'm not sure.
All right,
Brother Harvey's making a big one for me, so.
That's what's up.
Special size.
So let me put his email address on here on the screen, family. And so holla at him to get your Read Book Club T-shirts. He's also on IG, and his IG account is hockey_customs. Hockey_customs. So you can also contact him through IG, and I'll also put his contact information. I keep saying I'm gonna do it, and I always forget to do it, but I'll put it in the video description, so you all can reach out directly to him. All right, family, have a beautiful, beautiful week. Please, peace, and Black Power.